A red card, a suspension that seemed almost certain, and a last-minute decision that forced the entire World Cup to reconsider how FIFA operates the rules of the game. Folarin Balogun was sent off after a controversial collision. Based on how teams understood the regulations, he would have to miss the next match. But just before the clash between the United States and Belgium, FIFA unexpectedly suspended the punishment. Balogun was allowed to play. For the United States national team, it may have been a correction of a mistake. For Belgium, it was a shock. And for the World Cup, this may become a dangerous precedent. But this story is not only about whether one player is allowed to compete or not. It is bigger than the United States versus Belgium match. Bigger even than the referee's decision in one specific play. The real issue is trust. Every team enters the World Cup with one simple assumption. The rules have already been written. The rules are communicated in the same way. And the rules will be applied in the same way. But when FIFA unexpectedly uses a disciplinary clause to suspend a punishment right before a knockout match, they do not only change Balogun's status, they change the entire tournament's sense of fairness. Because in elite football, the most dangerous controversies sometimes do not happen on the pitch. They come from the way those running the tournament decide who the rules are applied to, and at what moment. To understand why this decision became so controversial, we have to go back to the United States national team's previous match. It was the game against Bosnia and Herzegovina in the round of 32. At that moment, Folarin Balogun was one of the most dangerous players for the United States. He had scored, he was in good form, and he was the kind of striker who could change the entire match with just one burst of acceleration. But then came the turning point. In the 64th minute, Balogun charged into a challenge with defender Tarek Moharimovic. At first, the referee did not show a card. The match seemed ready to continue, but VAR intervened. When the incident was shown in slow motion, the collision looked far more serious. Balogun's studs had made contact with the back of his opponent's leg. Moharimovic had to stay down on the pitch and required medical attention. The referee was called to the monitor. He reviewed the incident, and then the decision was made. A straight red card for Balogun. From that moment, the story seemed very clear. A player receives a red card, an automatic suspension for the next match. And the United States' next match was the clash with Belgium. Immediately after the game, the United States side disagreed. They argued that Balogun had no intention of seriously harming his opponent. It was a fast play, an accident during a challenge, not an act of violence. But even though the debate over intent existed, the punishment was still understood to be unavoidable. Balogun would have to miss the next match. At least, that was what everyone thought would happen. And this is exactly what made that incident so complicated. If we look only at intent, Balogun may deserve some sympathy. He did not charge into his opponent with the purpose of taking him out. He did not appear to want to cause an injury. He was simply trying to win the ball in a situation that unfolded extremely quickly. But modern football does not judge intent alone. It also looks at the point of contact, the level of danger, and the consequence that the challenge creates for the opponent. When VAR slowed the incident down, everything became more serious. A normal challenge at real speed can turn into dangerous evidence when it is reviewed frame by frame. That is why many people defended Balogun. But it is also why the referee had grounds to show a red card. The issue lies here. The debate over the red card is one thing. The debate over the suspension after the red card is something else. If FIFA wanted to review the incident and conclude that the punishment was too harsh, they needed a truly clear process. But what happened afterward made everything even harder to understand. Because instead of closing the controversy, FIFA's decision opened up an even bigger question. That question exploded just a few hours before the United States faced Belgium. FIFA unexpectedly announced that Balogun's automatic suspension would be suspended, not simply cancelled outright, but temporarily postponed for a probationary period. That meant Balogun was allowed to play. For the United States national team, this was huge news. They had their most important striker back for a knockout match. A player in good form. Someone capable of making the difference against Belgium's defense. But for the Belgian side, this decision was not only a tactical disadvantage. It felt like the rules had been changed at the last minute. Because before that, teams understood that a straight red card would lead to a suspension in the next match. That regulation was viewed as automatic, clear, and applied to everyone. but FIFA used another disciplinary clause to temporarily suspend the punishment. This is where the problem lies. If FIFA has the authority to do that, why was that authority not clearly explained from the beginning? If this is an exception, what makes Balogun's case special? And if a suspension can be changed right before a match, how much certainty can teams still have in the rules? That is why Belgium reacted so strongly. For them, the story was no longer about whether Balogun deserved the red card or not, nor was it only about the United States becoming stronger with him on the pitch. What angered Belgium was the principle. If all teams were told that a red card would lead to an automatic suspension, then that rule had to be applied in the same way. A team cannot suddenly be granted an exception just before kickoff, while the opponent is left with no time to prepare. Belgium saw a bigger problem in this decision. They believed FIFA had not only changed the status of one player, FIFA had shaken the sense of fairness surrounding the entire match. Because in a knockout game, every small detail can change the result. A striker is allowed to play. A defense has to adjust its plan. A coaching staff has to change its approach. And an opponent has to accept all of that only a few hours before the ball starts rolling. For Belgium, this was not a complaint about being put at a disadvantage. It was a question of whether every team was truly competing under the same set of rules. If the rules have exceptions, those exceptions must be clear. If FIFA has the power to intervene, the standard for that intervention must be transparent. Otherwise, every decision after this can be called into question. But to make the story fair, it also has to be seen from the United States' side. For them, Balogun's red card had been a controversial decision from the very beginning. The play happened extremely quickly. Balogun showed no sign of deliberately trying to take his opponent out. He was trying to win the ball, not charging in to cause an injury. From the United States' perspective, the suspension may have been too harsh for an incident that lacked intent, so when FIFA suspended the punishment, they could view it as a correction of a mistake, a way to avoid turning a controversial play into an overly severe punishment. But the problem is that football is never seen from only one side. What the United States saw as justice, Belgium saw as an exception. What the United States saw as reasonable, the opponent saw as an advantage handed over at the last minute. And in a knockout match, that difference is enough to turn a disciplinary decision into a crisis of trust. And it is exactly at this point that FIFA's role becomes most important. FIFA can say that it did not break the rules. It can argue that the disciplinary code allows the competent body to suspend or temporarily postpone a punishment in special cases. If that clause exists, then it cannot simply be concluded that FIFA had no authority at all. But the question is not only whether FIFA has the power. The question is what standard that power is used under. Who is allowed to request a review of a punishment? What is the additional evidence? How long does the process take? Do other teams have access to the same mechanism? And if the suspension was previously understood as automatic, why was this exception not explained more clearly? This is what makes FIFA's decision dangerous. A decision may be procedurally valid, but it can still create a crisis if it lacks transparency. In football, rules do not only need to exist on paper, rules must be applied in a way that makes teams believe they are being treated equally. If FIFA does not clearly explain why Balogun was granted an exception, then the issue will not stop with the United States versus Belgium match. It will become a bigger question about how FIFA controls its own rules of the game. And when FIFA does not explain things clearly enough, a sensitive question immediately appears. Did the United States national team benefit because they were the host team? There is no direct evidence to say that FIFA intentionally favored the United States, and it would be wrong to turn that suspicion into a firm conclusion. But in major controversies, the feeling of fairness can sometimes matter almost as much as fairness itself. The United States is the host team. Balogun is one of their most important attacking players. The match against Belgium is a knockout match, and the decision was made only a few hours before the ball started rolling. Each detail on its own may be explainable, but when all of them are placed side by side, the question becomes very difficult to avoid. If this had been a smaller team, a less famous player, a match with less media pressure, would FIFA have handled it this quickly and this flexibly? This is exactly what makes the case dangerous, not because it proves FIFA was biased, but because it creates the space for suspicion to appear. And once trust begins to crack, every decision FIFA makes afterward can be examined through the same lens. And if suspicion has already appeared, then the consequences do not belong to just one match. The Balogun case could become a precedent. From now on, whenever an important player receives a red card at the World Cup, teams can absolutely ask the question, why was our case not reviewed? Why was our player not allowed to have the punishment temporarily postponed? Why was an exception that had been applied once not applied again? That is the biggest problem FIFA has created for itself. An exception, if not explained clearly, will no longer remain only an exception. It will become a weapon for other teams to use in every controversy that follows. Every major red card could lead to an appeal. Every important suspension could turn into a legal battle, and every FIFA decision will be compared with the Balogun case. If FIFA agrees with one team but rejects another, it will have to explain why. If that explanation is not convincing enough, accusations of unfairness will grow even stronger. The World Cup cannot operate on the feeling that the rules change depending on the circumstances. A major tournament needs clear rules. It needs clear procedures. And it needs every team to believe that no one is being given access to a secret door that others do not know about. And that is exactly why the United States versus Belgium match was no longer an ordinary knockout game. All the attention should have been on the pitch, the tactics of both teams, the form of the players, the moments that could decide the fate of the match. But before the ball even started rolling, the biggest story was already outside the touchline. If Balogun scored, the controversy would explode. If he assisted, the controversy would still explode. Even if he did not make a direct difference, the question would still remain. A player who was supposed to be suspended had been allowed to play through a controversial decision. That is what cast a shadow over the match from the very beginning. Because sometimes, a match is not only affected by what happens in the 90 minutes, it is also affected by the decisions made before the referee blows the opening whistle. And that is why this case cannot be seen as a small detail on the sidelines of the World Cup. It is a test for FIFA. If the red card rule is automatic, why can the punishment be temporarily postponed at the last minute? If the rule has exceptions, why were those exceptions not clearly explained to all teams from the beginning? And if FIFA has the power to intervene, what standard determines who gets reviewed, who gets rejected, and when that power is activated? Balogun's story will eventually pass. The United States versus Belgium match will also have a result. But the question of trust will remain. Because the World Cup does not only need exciting matches, the World Cup needs a legal system that makes every team believe they are being treated fairly. Fairness does not only exist in written documents. Fairness must be seen in every decision. If you want to follow more behind-the-scenes stories, controversies, and the biggest drama of the World Cup, subscribe to the channel right now. Because sometimes, the biggest match does not take place on the pitch. It takes place in the way football is governed.